Greetings. Welcome to ITR Live. I'm your host, Chris Hagano, and we're back here in Studio 130 at ITR headquarters in Central Iowa. I'm joined here in studio today with everyone's favorite John Hendrickson and also with the now returning Chris Ingstead. How was vacation?
It was good.
Yeah, the listeners missed you.
I don't think they did. But I missed the listeners, Chris.
Okay. Well, if you want them to miss you, you got to step up your game.
I'm ready.
Give them something to miss.
You brought up a few things that I feel very strongly about today. So if we touch on those topics, I've got some takes.
Good. We'll apologize on the front end if you hear some coughing and hacking. We are in the middle of an air quality alert, which it's kind of nasty out there, guys. Apparently, it's even nastier in eastern Iowa than it is here. But
I've heard that, and coupled with sleeping under a window air conditioning unit for the past week, my voice sounds really good. This is made for radio today, John.
Well, good. Apparently, the air quality in Cedar Rapids is undesirable, or I don't know what the word was I saw in the news article that I saw, but I tend generally kind of feel that way about the air quality in Cedar Rapids on most days, so that's fine. So I think I kind of decided we weren't going to do any more construction updates, but I do have to point out that the landscaping is in and it's already starting to go brown.
I mean, I've got some theories there. One might be, I have seen them watering in the middle of the day, which I don't think is recommended for middle of the summer.
No.
Water middle of the day. But there's more waters on our office, more water on our office windows than there are in actually the brand new landscaping.
Right before we went on air here, the sprinkler turned on, seemed to cover the window of Studio 130 here pretty well, and then shut off again. So. Mm-hmm. I don't know what we're doing. Somebody's wandering around out there. I don't even know if they're responsible for this, but we got brown landscaping, so that's good. Okay. First up is an article that I think I saw on Axios about the city of Des Moines lamenting one of the changes in the property tax bill this year and how that was going to hurt them so bad. Mm-hmm. Did you see this one, Chris?
I think we all saw it in the office.
Okay, good. And right on cue, what are they threatening is going to happen?
They continue to cry wolf and say, but by the way, these changes we're talking about just mean they're going to get more money. They will receive more money than the years before, just not as much more as they wanted to.
Right.
And despite that,
people's property taxes are still going up.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
But seniors and veterans will go up not as much as others, and that so they talk about this might mean cuts to police and fire, or it might mean cuts to plowing roads. Mm-hmm. I would suggest if you're really looking for places to cut, why don't you look at some of your economic development agreements, right? Why don't you look at a few less subsidies to folks building new buildings? I think that your community would be okay with fewer $1 million deals with developers than with longer police response times. But I've not run a city government, so I could be all wet about that, Chris.
You're asking people to take their word for it of the false choice that because of this legislative change, because they get more money, that this will impact police and fire. When we found out, it didn't do any of that when they did this the last time they cried wolf on this.
Well, that's right, and we dove into, and you can go to the foundation website and see some of this because we did it a few different times. But the amount of money the cities have in reserve, and it's in reserve, and it's not allocated or spoken for in any way. It's truly a reserve fund. You know what that money is there for in sort of good government school, they would tell you? It is for some of the unforeseen hiccups. Like maybe you've got to deal with a new tax credit program, and you've got reserves to cover that. And so many cities in Iowa are just awash in cash in their unallocated reserve funds that they can cover any of these little minor credit programs without having to cry that the sky is falling and we'll just let go of the whole police department or whatever they're suggesting.
The amount of money we're talking about is a small fraction of 1% of their property tax collections. And yet the very first thing is we are going to scare people that we're not going to be able to send a fire truck to their house. It is unconscionable when they are shelling out $10 million for a library, which is nothing more than a high-maintenance eyesore in the middle of downtown. Sorry, John, I know you love libraries, but whatever. The over $100 million they got out in debt that they're going to have to pay. It has.
By the way, this is from a community that received big time ARPA funds too.
But let's go and whine and scare people about what is really a rounding error on a property tax bill. Because what should have happened let's be honest, what should have happened on that property tax bill should have been painful for the city of Des Moines. They should be thankful. They should be in the news thanking the legislature for not doing what, frankly, they probably should have done, which is to whack them hard.
Yes.
But instead, they're going to cry about police and fire response times. Are you outraged, John? I don't feel like you got enough outrage today. You're just sitting there, just hanging out with us.
Well,
Herbert Hoover would not have stood for this.
No, he wouldn't have. No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
But this is typical from at all levels of government.
Right.
I mean, when they, if there's a shutdown at the federal level, the first thing they do is
close the monuments.
The monuments, but also say it's going to affect all kinds of services, and that's the way they scare people into. So it's this is just right out of the government playbook.
We talk about we'll close the monument so people see that, or maybe our troops deployed overseas will have to wait a few weeks to get paid. And if anybody does that's BS. My sister-in-law, who's been a Capitol Hill staffer for a while, I don't think has ever missed a paycheck. So
yeah, well,
if we really are cutting pay to service people, that's criminal. And otherwise, like if the Capitol Hill staff person keeps getting paid throughout all this, like we're probably actually still doing okay, and we can stop with the shenanigans.
It just to your point, John. It sometimes it just feels like a show. The whole thing is just a charade meant to take the people along for a ride.
Yeah.
And so I guess if we can shine our own little ray of sunlight on all of it, fine. But here's the takeaway, folks. When your local government is trying to scare you with how awful it is when they're asked to spend less money, you need to not believe them.
That's right.
You need to just be skeptical of everything they say. If it is about them not having enough money or about some awful thing that the legislature did or that they need more or whatever, you should immediately be skeptical of everything they say. And I hate saying it that way because there are some great local elected officials, there's some great administrators, and there are situations where they absolutely do need to do things, but they have not policed themselves, and too often they just go down this path of trying to scare you. And the people of Iowa are wising up to it.
Yes.
Yeah, and I
also the city of Des Moines.
I can't drop the microphone; it's on a mount here. So if I take my hands off it, it just stays there.
The city of Des Moines also wants to take away more of my parking spaces on Ingersoll. So, I don't live in Des Moines. I go into Des Moines for dinner or dessert.
Yeah,
a lot. Like I can't think of something that will keep me away more than no place to park my car.
You're supposed to take your bike with you, and once you cross 63rd Street, then you park in, I don't know.
That's all a neat that's all a neat idea, but that's not how a state like Iowa
sounds
works.
like a Mayor Pete transportation.
That's right.
In fairness, I believe the Des Moines mayor is actually not in favor of this bikeability plan on Ingersoll because it might impact his business. And I think he's right on that. I agree with him on that.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. We need to talk about tax credits, guys.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, I am too. So, John, how do you feel about tax credits?
I don't particularly like them. I think that's
well,
I'm trying to be diplomatic by saying that.
Be diplomatic.
Yeah.
This is ITR unplugged.
Yeah.
We're just going to go with it. Okay. So it came up this week. We were reminded once again of the forces at work to try and preserve their tax credits. So we talk a lot at Iowans for Tax Relief about being your voice at the Capitol when spending decisions are made, and you go up to the Capitol and everyone's got their hand out and they want some of your tax dollars for everything that's happening. And what we don't always see is that those hands are out, but it's because they want a special incentive in the tax code.
Yes.
Now that's the same thing one way or the other, whether you writing a check to somebody or giving them a special break where they don't pay enough, or even sometimes they actually get a check through a refundable tax credit program. But both of those things really are philosophically the same.
They are taking your taxpayer dollars and reallocating them to, in some instances, I would say recipients who don't really need it.
Right. And so we work to be the voice of the taxpayer on both of those things. We want to be your voice to cut taxes, and we want to be your voice that spending decisions and the decisions that are made with your tax dollars are made fairly. Mm-hmm. And so the whole idea of a tax credit it kind of runs contrary to that everyone's treated the same under the tax code. So we've had some people this week that have all along they don't really agree with us on that. So Chris, I'm going to let you kind of jump into this one because you get fired up about this, and I always like hearing about it.
I do. Because when we work for lower taxes, we like lower, flatter, fairer taxes for everybody, not the government picking winners and losers, not selective industries or organizations receiving a better deal than everyone else. And I would start with saying we have a plan in place that is lowering Iowa's corporate tax rate from 12% down to a flat 5.5%. So we're cutting our corporate tax rate in Iowa by more than half. And as we do that, we're scaling down some credits. And some of those credit recipients are crying about this. And I would say, look, if we cut your tax rate in half and you still think that's not going to work for you, then that right away highlights the flaws in the current system and shows why it needs to be fixed. But then as I look at recipients of one particular credit, in fact, the research activities tax credit, and this information, anybody can go pull it up. But you know, there is one corporation in particular that 3 separate entities under the same corporate umbrella land on this biggest list and have combined to be over $15 million of tax credits from the state. Now, the interesting thing is a number of recipients on this list are all in an industry that is already heavily subsidized and incentivized. And if those sort of rules aren't enough, we're going to start cutting checks back or just taking money straight off the top of your tax bill.
And so we're talking on this credit in particular. This is the research activities credit.
Correct.
There's a whole host of other ones out there.
Yeah, this is just an example. For people to think about.
And it's one of the bigger ones, but it has been reformed recently. But yeah, let's talk about this.
But like there is a company on here again. They have at least 3 different entities on here as the top recipients of this credit, right?
Right.
They may have others that just didn't make the cut there. That is a $7 billion corporation. And by the way, that's not $7 billion top line. That is net income for the year. That is bottom line. This corporation cleared $7 billion. And now they are crying foul that Iowa wants to scale back the $15 million in credits they offered them. Now, first of all, I would say a company clearing $7 billion doesn't need any additional credits from the state of Iowa. And if they did, I mean, Chris, you lose 15 million out of 7 billion in rounding pretty quickly. So to claim that it's going to really hurt their bottom line is just patently false. And I'll tell you what it does do. What it does do is when you're subsidizing from the state with tax credits, when you're subsidizing the hire of certain positions, all you're really doing is raising the market rate for that salary for everybody else in the state. So, you know, the firms that are trying to hire these same engineers or whomever, but they're not getting the subsidy, they've now got to compete with the giant corporation that's having state subsidies, so they've got to pay more too. I mean, it is patently unfair. Okay, we don't need to subsidize these big corporations. They are doing just fine without us. I mean, goodness gracious, this corporation cleared. Again, this is after all their expenses, taxes. They cleared about as much money as the state of Iowa took in through their general fund last year. So who really should be paying to whom here?
What galls me about it is far too often those of us sticking up for the taxpayer in this deal are lectured to that we just don't understand the value of these tax credit programs.
They're correct. I don't understand it.
Well, yeah, they can try and make the case, but it's not persuasive.
I've only spent my career in corporate finance and tax policy, so I guess, you know, I'm not capable of understanding how tax credits impact corporate finance. So please tell me.
Yeah. Okay.
I've never thought of myself as a populist, you guys, until I started hearing the crying about this and looking at the numbers going, goodness gracious, even for a capitalist like me, this is getting a little hard to take.
Yeah, I agree completely. John, you need to jump in on this.
Well, I mean, I agree. And I mean, if you look at it from a broad perspective, I mean, research and activities tax credit is just one of many, as you mentioned, but think of what, you know, Governor Reynolds and Majority Leader Whitmer have said from the beginning since their effort to do tax reform. One of the reasons why Iowa has had such high tax rates is that for a long time, decades, Iowa has used the tax code for legislation through tax credits. And so, and rather of solving a problem, it was the legislature would just, let's do a tax credit. Let's do a tax exemption. Let's solve the problem through the tax code. And what that does is it disguises high tax rates. And as we're seeing now, I think we're up to 40 some states, with Iowa being the leader, of lowering income tax rates nationwide. And what's happening is that states can no longer get away with having high tax rates because there's too much economic competition among the states, with businesses and people that are all competing to relocate and so forth. And we're seeing that evidence pretty clearly. Yeah. I mean, look at the high tax states, and there is literally a mass exodus occurring of people leaving those states as a result of high tax rates. And so tax credits, while they may help certain people, they're basically carve-outs for special interests.
Well,
and whether that's a big corporation or an individual, and so even it literally shifts the burden to another taxpayer, and so it's poor tax policy.
Well, yeah, and I think you brought up a good point there at the outset of your comment, John. The legislature has done good work of starting down the path of flattening that tax. I mean, you alluded to it as well, is that they actually have, especially in the corporate tax, removed some of those credits and exemptions and lowered the rate. And I think what's given rise to some of the recipients don't like that. They want to get their goodies back.
That's right.
Those little goodies that help boost the bottom line for these profitable organizations.
But Chris, do they? This is a for one in particular, 0.2% of their bottom line.
I mean,
is it really that much of a boost? But they want to hold the rest of the state hostage because they can't get their carve outs. They no longer get to benefit from the crony capitalism.
Yes, that's exactly what they want to do. They want to throw a fit and get theirs and hold the rest of the state. Yeah, I think John, think you nailed it.
As you were explaining this, the word that came to my mind was intertwined. Right, tax credits are intertwined with tax rates, and sometimes the only way to get lower taxes in a state is to hand out some credits. Okay, that's the only thing to get passed, and maybe if that's the scenario that you're in, maybe you consider some of those, and I don't know. But that's not the scenario we're in anymore. We can make a real difference, but the biggest hurdle on the corporate tax rate is how we unwind these credits, and it's the crony capitalism that's standing in the way.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'd look at it from a different direction. If we did not have a corporate income tax in the state, then what happens? Because these folks are still these are refundable tax credits.
Yes.
They're getting a check. They're getting money back from the government.
Some are.
Some are, yeah. But they are refundable. But what would you do if there was no corporate income tax? Now it's just handouts. So they would, I'm guessing, would still want their tax credit even though there's no tax due. Mm-hmm. So I guess in my mind that just transparently lays out that all this is a handout, and they want to keep getting their free hand. You know what? I'm not getting a free handout.
And I mean, in a sense, again, as a capitalist, and I mean, I guess for them, go ahead and pursue the handouts, or get yours. I guess can be your thing, but the legislature's responsibility is to the entire state, not to a single industry or single entity. And so I hope they keep in mind what's going to benefit everybody, as opposed to just what's going to be able to benefit the corporations. Many of these corporations, by the way, who are able to employ full-time in-house lobbyists to keep the pressure on up there all the time.
Right. And look, as a former legislator, I get it. And there's a lot of effort and forces to pay. And some of the, not all tax credits are created equally either. Nope. There are some that have far more benefit to the state broadly that line up far better with some key industries in our state. I mean, at least we still don't have a film tax credit in the state of Iowa, which has nothing to do with any of our strategic advantages, although we spend hundreds of millions of dollars on it. But yes, I understand that even conservative legislators from time to time will want to work on tax credits, but it should be the exception. There should be a very cautious eye, and certainly we shouldn't have folks trying to lecture others about trying to unwind them.
Well, here's something interesting too. Is for years we've had what's essentially I don't remember the official name anymore, but was essentially a tax credit review committee that would periodically review this. And John, you and I used to sit through these things until we realized nobody else was listening. But they often came back, and the official position of the state was this is making no discernible difference. Right? I mean, that's the conclusion on a particular credit. And another credit was we cannot tell that there's any additional activity based on this. And so. I'm really interested. Georgia is about to kick off their version of a tax credit review committee. I'm really curious what they will find, and then I'm curious to see what action, if any, their legislature will take.
I sat on that review committee on more than one occasion, and it's interesting.
Yeah.
Come in and make folks defend it. But it never really led to anything. Right. Occasionally, you might stumble across one that's just almost dormant, and even the industry's like, yeah, go ahead and get rid of it or something. But that's rare. It's too bad. So, Chris, do you feel better?
Yeah, I guess I had a lot of tax policy I had to get out. My wife and children didn't want to hear about tax policy last week. So I had a lot.
Yeah, good. Good, you got it. John, do you feel better?
I do. Yes.
Good.
Yeah.
I got one thing.
I'm not trying to wrap this up. We're still going. I just on that issue. I feel like there was a lot of energy that was pent up that we had to get rid of.
John's got his back to the door, the window here, but I saw that there was another delivery for you, John.
Oh,
and after the collection of Pat Buchanan buttons that were delivered early this week, I am excited to see what today's delivery brought.
Yes. Yeah.
Do you know what it is?
No. Well, I'm expecting a new pair of shoes, so that could be it.
Wow.
So it's not.
That's not.
Yeah.
That's not. What was John? What was the Bush and Quail Pat Buchanan button?
I think it said Bush and Quail will fail in '92.
Yeah, vote Pat or something.
Yeah.
He was right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pat Buchanan was right. That's kind of be the new podcast motto.
That's right.
Pat Buchanan was right. Okay, good. All right.
Well, and so was in some ways Ross Perot was right in that election. I voted for Ross Perot in my student election.
Good. That was the first presidential election that I voted in. For real. Yeah. I was a George H.W. Bush voter.
Ross for boss.
There you go. That doesn't surprise me though, John. It doesn't. So, all right, guys. Well, I think that's about all for today. So good to have you back in the saddle, Chris. John, thanks for your moral support on all this. We appreciate it. So we'll be back again real soon. Thanks for joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tell your friends. Give us a 5-star review. And with that, we will see you next time on ITR Live.